There's a lot of man hours. You look at a rack of coyotes, and there's 1,000 of them there, and you think, oh, there's probably 2,000 hours in that, just or more, that the guys have invested.
All right, what is up, everybody? Coming in cold, Jim. But that's a good thing, because hopefully all that cold, it's 14 degrees out right now, has got the coyotes all furred up and ready to go, because we have a coyote hunt, an upcoming coyote hunt. But before we go hunting, one thing that we wanted to chat with an expert about is kind of the I got one, now what? The now what moment.
Sure.
I got one, now what? And so, Jim, you're to my right, and further to my right, we've got Greg Schrader. Now, we were talking a little bit about this earlier. Apparently, if you go out west, it's more of a Schroeder.
Yes.
If you're out in the Midwest, where we're at right now, it's Schrader. So we're going to go, Greg, we're going to go with Schrader. We're in the Midwest. We're going to use the common vernacular around here. But, Greg, you have a very long and storied history in, I guess, what I'd call the fur industry. So, I mean, before we get too deep here, I mean, definitely, this might be some of the more interesting stuff that we talk about. Man, tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started in the fur industry, and a little bit about yourself and Fur Harvesters Auction Inc., where we're sitting here right now. I will mention, if you're watching, we're surrounded by fur right now. We've got
literally
coyotes to the right, wolves behind the cameras. We've seen foxes, badgers, all sorts of stuff here. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
Well, we started in fur business in '74. I did. Went and made a mistake of walking to a mink rancher. And ended up staying and working. And that business, at that time, that was Cambridge Hide Fur. It was a really small fur buyer. And we worked there processing, skinning. You could do kind of piecework. Obviously, on the farm, you could make more money working. And Cambridge Hide and Fur then became affiliated with Hudson Bay, London.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which at that time was the biggest fur auction house in the world. It was an auction house, and from there it continued to grow until it was, for a buyer, a country buyer, was the biggest in the United States. You know, we'd handle 1 million rats a year, 300,000 coon, probably as big as most auction houses are today. And from the next step was to learn to grade, and then they have the option to go to London to learn from experts. And met a lot of really interesting graders over the years, learned a lot. And we stayed. And then at that time, Hudson Bay, London basically went out of business, so it became Hudson Bay, New York, Toronto. And then from that, Hudson Bay was in Toronto for years. And then in '86, I believe, if my dates are right, Hudson Bay, that's when they decided to go to fur business. And then it was incorporated, and it was taken over by Lenny Warner with a crew, and that then turned into NAF, as we see it today, as the North American Fur Auctions.
Okay.
And then they stayed, and I worked there through until about 10 years ago. And then in November of 19, a year ago, they went out of business. So now we're basically ended up with the last auction house that handles wild fur in the United States, or probably in the world. There's a few in Russia, but in the world.
Wow.
The last one.
I can't even believe that you guys are like just down the highway from us too.
Yeah, right down the highway. So, and we get in from all over the United States.
Okay.
We concentrate more in the north, obviously, because of the quality and the amount of trapping. And we run routes just like we talked before with fur buyers would stop in town. Now we run routes, and you bring your fur, and it has to be processed, stretched and dried, which is another process. And then we pick it up, and then it goes right to the auction that used to be just for dealers. So Hudson Bay at the in the early 90s gave that option to the trappers, that they could sell right alongside the dealers and cut out the middleman. There's still but we still handle a lot of dealer stuff because they buy it green, they process it, and some of the guys just like the money right away.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of like don't have to mess with it as much.
And a lot of guys like the auction house, just the challenge of it.
Okay.
So they process, and then we have usually 2 or 3 sales a year. We'll have one in April, which we're just coming into now. We're collecting for. Then we'll have another one in June. We usually have one in January.
Okay. And then, so yeah, like what we were talking about a little bit earlier, and it sounds like there's a little bit of a transition going on there, but I'd say back when, the couple times that, we'd go shoot some coons.
Yep.
This is when I lived in Nebraska, Jim. But we would just take them in the round, just the whole coon, and then you'd try and go, I guess, so they wouldn't sit too long before the fur buyer, I guess, if you will, would come by. And so it was like every Thursday at, after work, you'd go by and you could drop your coons off or your coyotes, and they'd write you a check, and then off you go. But it sounds like more and more you're having to, I guess, get your fur put up to a state where it's skinned, stretched, and dried.
Yeah, I used to run a route just like you talked, and when I was in the early 20s, and we ran a route town to town to town, 7 days a week, and you'd put a stop at the local tavern or truck stop or sporting goods store, and everybody would meet you there, and you'd write checks. And as the bigger buyers, like the Cambridge Hide and Furs or the Eddie Bauers, some of these bigger buyers went out of business for one reason or another. You've seen the buyers start to diminish, because when we were like the big buyer, Cambridge Hide and Fur, we also bought from all the little buyers.
Okay.
So we not only in some cases financed them, we'd buy from them once a week, so they had an option. They wouldn't lose money. It was always the risk of the big buyer that was buying it. And then the big buyer would deal with the auction houses. And as the big buyers diminished, the little ones got older and quit. They even with the dealers today, now you have 2 sales a year, so it takes quite a bit of money. You're going to you buy all season, sell it in April and May. So it takes longer, and then, of course, it got to be harder and harder to find people to process it, because a lot of what you bought was green. You're in a carcass, you had to hire people to skin it, flesh and stretch it, and the costs kept going up and up and up like everything. And it got to where a lot of them just decided they had enough. They quit.
Was the cost of everything going up, but the fur prices
were
not going up?
Yeah, were not enough to warrant.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was. And then what happened was, as they diminished, you lost a whole generation of fur people.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't the opportunities. If you were in town when I was a kid, I got started, you went to fur bar. You always had work.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time here in Cambridge, we had. We probably employed 50, 60 people just processing fur. And you could work after high school. A lot of them are high school kids, right out of high school. And they'd all show up and work at the fur house. Retired women. And when that left, and all the rest of the fur buyers left, where do you go to learn?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have that day-to-day contact with that little buyer. If you wanted to put your fur up, you wouldn't need to show you how to do it, because you could see the guys doing it. Now where do you go to learn it? You don't see anybody. If you watched guys doing it, or the buyer would walk you through the steps, because he wanted you to do it too. And then you bring it back, stretch and dry, he encouraged it. But as they quit in their late 80s, early 90s, now you have a whole generation that never, unless they learned it from the parents, are not learning. They'll go harvest a coon today. Let's say you're 15, and you get a coon. What do I do with it? First, it's got to be skinned. Mom don't want me to do that in the garage. I can't do it in the basement. And then even if I could flesh it, where do I do it? Mom don't want a freezer. So you're losing the whole, even if you shoot it, the whole generation. We get calls every day, guys. I just shot a coyote. What do I do? Oh, you got to skin, flesh, and stretch it. Well, you know what he did with it. Really? Okay. And there they sit.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see the fur production go down.
Huh. Now, why is it that the fur industry has dipped so much? Is it because of like, I mean, I'd imagine it's a number of things, but public perception probably of people using and wearing furs, and then synthetic furs that are coming out that are maybe getting better?
You know, even when the prices were high in the early 80s, late 90s, they still had public perception, anti-bias, whatever. But I think as it got, as when we've seen the computers come out, YouTube and everything else, you had more. It was easier for the public to access misbeliefs with trapping and hunting, see with all sports. And so the public perception, did change. You know, to where it's not, and when that changed, a lot of the fur production we used to have is turned to ADC work, which is animal damage control. Oh. So they'll do it all year round when it doesn't have value. Obviously, they want to do it. So they get calls in the summertime. In the southern states, it's a lot of it. And you have companies that you hire, and they'll come over, remove your beaver, take care of your coon, what have you. So you got a big production of fur yet. It's just at the wrong time of the year.
Right. So it's not, they're performing more of a, I guess, a service, if you will. Like they're still doing the trapping. They're still running a company. They're making an income off of, trapping or removal of, these, nuisance animals. But the fur is, like you said, it could be the middle of the summer, and it's just not going to have that value.
Most of what fur is today, they're a nuisance or predators. So they're going to get removed. But it's seen most of it is done with, it's ADC, and it's a huge, that's our biggest competition.
And I mean, if they're just getting paid just to take the animal, or whatever, or move it or get it off the property.
And the lot. I mean, these legitimate companies make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah. And so if they don't have to fuss around with all the skinning, fleshing,
you have a coon in your chimney with a bunch of young ones, and they want $500 to get them out. You'll pay it. And sometimes you can get it through insurance.
There's definitely, I'd say, a level of urgency there. You're not like, I'm going to wait 6 months until their hides are a little bit better. It's like, no, I probably should get the coons out of the chimney.
So they do it. ADC is a huge, it really is. I mean, and states have it. Wisconsin has it. We have trappers for the state that trap all summer, remove beavers when they don't have a value. All states have it.
What have you seen, I guess, with some of that value, like when you first got started out, or and maybe there's been some ebb and flow to the fur market, depending on just where it's at, but like what have you seen from starting out until now as far as like the value of fur and where it's ending up and where you're seeing it, and it comes into fashion, out of fashion?
When we first went to a fur buyer at that time, probably how I got into it, is if you had a coon, for instance, and there wasn't as many coon then, they've populated the north a lot since then. You went in there, and they didn't have a value. I mean, we hunted coon. My dad was a coon hunter, but we just, for the carcasses, just to eat them.
Okay.
And, then you hear the rumors that they might be worth something. So you skin one. You can only imagine a skin job. And you took it to a fur bar and you got $3. They really have a value? And so obviously the money then went a lot farther, all the way into the 70s, where there was guys quitting jobs because the fur was so valuable. You could get a $3 an hour job or go catch a couple $50 coon.
Oh, $50.
Yeah, 70.
Wow.
I remember running routes in the 70s, paying a $70 top, $10 rats.
Wow.
And I had a brother work on a dairy farm. He was salary for $250 a week, and he thought he had a good job.
Now, is that because everybody was buying coonskin hats back then?
No, there wasn't. It was
Or whatever?
yeah.
The old
The
Davy Crockett?
The Davy Crockett
No,
craze.
they came out of then where the production at that time, you didn't have four-wheelers.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have all the access to equipment we have today. So if someone in them days caught 100 coon, that was a big deal.
Sure.
The biggest production was coming out of the south. So what happened was they had, as the coon population grew by the time it got to the late 70s, there was more knowledge. And versus today where the equipment's 10 times as good, now you have guys catch 100 a day, not 100 a year.
Oh.
So it, and it's at that time coon were still a new thing. Where today, with all the ranch fur you're competing with, in them days we had probably a world production of 15 million mink, not 100. Ranch fox were minimal. Now they're raising by the overseas. There's 7, 8, 10 million of them. So there is a lot more competition for trim.
So it's not so much that people aren't buying as much fur.
More produced.
It's just that it's produced on ranches.
Yeah,
And,
they're just more produced.
And is when people are buying fur, like, I guess it's primarily like garment makers. Is it going into like sort of quote luxury goods like coats and pillows and stuff like that, or is there any other secret use of furs
and the biggest for most of the wild fur right now, the long-haired stuff is trim.
Okay.
That seems to be the big market push. A muskrat and stuff is for liners.
Okay.
There's and the garment articles that have to compete with a ranch maker. Remember, a ranch maker are pretty cheap right now. They've dropped a lot in value. You can go. Let's say you could buy, rumors in China, you could buy mink coats for as little as $500, which is a lot easier to sew because they're all the same. They're fees in a bond where it hurt the articles like the sable, the fisher, the red fox, because everybody wants a mink coat. Always has, right? Mink or king. So everything is valued off of that. So the wild fur is still going to pay for that huge mink production because the mink went, you go back 10 years or 7 years ago, they're averaging $100 a sale. You got 40 in them.
Mm-hmm.
And you got these ranchers that are basically like a dairy farmer.
Okay.
They're getting really big and automated. Milking parlors produce a lot of milk. And the ranchers basically got automated. And so it was unlimited what they could raise.
And if the king, so to speak, like you said, like mink is king, if that one is starting to get to the point where it's relatively inexpensive,
that's the problem.
then all the other ones, everyone looks at, well, if I can get a mink for that cheap.
Yeah, now it's gonna take a lot to change that perception to wild fur, because they've always been looked down as the inferior fur, to where it's something different.
Like mentally for me, it's like the reverse, because to me it seems like, you've got this, and I see some of the advantages. Like you said, you're raising it, you've got that consistency with the wild fur. You're just not going to have that level of consistency. Like you're trying to make a garment, you probably want it to look similar throughout, right?
Right.
But also like kind of like the supply and demand. It's like, well, all of a sudden it's not rare anymore.
It's not.
Yeah, everybody always, you go on to, you look at any other good or art or craft or some sort of luxury item, and it's always like the more one-off you can get, the more valuable it is. Yeah. But for whatever reason.
If all of a sudden I was able to farm gold, Jim, I don't think it would have the value that it does today.
That's right. That's right.
I'm a big alchemist, by the way.
No. So it's in a while when it came to us listening, obviously their budget was bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Promoting, it's hard to promote against an article, with that kind of a budget.
Oh yeah.
So,
Sure enough.
So you always were in the companies that, like North American Fur Auctions, that had that big budget because they handle ranch making both. Obviously, we're going to promote what was making them all the money, which was ranch making.
Interesting.
Huh.
And you know, and you can take companies overseas like Copenhagen, who's the biggest auction house in the world, or was. They're going out of business. That had huge budgets, so everything was ranch make.
Yeah.
Everywhere you looked, and till the production came back to haunt them.
And then why did that production come back to haunt them then?
What happened was, as they overproduced it, the price dropped.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay,
Just
so it is
Supply
kind
went up, demand stayed, maybe.
producing too much milk.
Okay.
You can do it, you know, and then the price dropped. So, yeah, you know, as they raised the value, at the same time the automation came, the production went through the roof.
Gotcha.
Really quick. I mean, when here in town, and we used to, everybody in town would flesh ranch mink, and it was done by hand. So if you want a job, you just went down and fleshed ranch mink at a mink rancher, and you could flesh all winter. And you probably only had 3,000 mink. You know, this is a lot of work. To where it got automated, they were fleshing them in 2 or 3 seconds.
Oh, really?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Wait, seconds.
So wait,
there was a
like
pause
people were no longer skinning
People were
and fleshing?
no, it's all done by machines. It's all replaced. I mean, just like what we do here by hand, we'll show you when we put up a coyote. That machines to skin the mink for you, flesh it, machines to stretch it. All you do is hang it and take it off.
Unbelievable. I didn't know that. I just assumed it was all. It's such a
One machine.
anytime I've skinned something, it's such a delicate kind of process.
And the machine replaced all the people in town.
They're taking over.
And at one time, Cambridge was, you know, the whole town was ranch mink. Still got a mink farm tavern.
No kidding.
Yeah. You know, the golf course, all that, this area right here was all mink ranches. And that's why how we got in the fur trade, you come down here for work.
Yeah.
Well, and when you're talking about, you know, long hair, I guess, versus short, like kind of what animals would fall within those classifications?
Your long hairs are pretty much all your canines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Your short hair are your beaver, muskrats.
Okay.
Pine squirrel. We do handle a lot of pine squirrels. They have fur on them, not the red squirrel or what we eat, but the pine squirrels. You know, the weasels, what have you. But most of our canines are long hair.
Okay. What are people using a pine squirrel for?
For liners.
For liners.
Yeah, and they have fur on them, and that's, you know, they're worth a lot. But it's in some parts of Canada, it's a big thing on their trap line.
Interesting.
They catch, you know, they subsidize their trap line with trapping squirrel.
How about that?
There ain't a lot to a pine squirrel.
There's not a lot to them, no. We got some this big.
Yeah.
And Russia produces a lot of pine squirrels.
Okay.
A lot of pine squirrels in Russia.
Big pine squirrel country.
Big pine. So as they produce more, ours become, and they can produce. If they get a year where they produce a lot, then ours are worth less.
All those Cold War squirrels.
Yeah, there you go.
Must have put something in the water.
And so I guess coyotes specifically then, because that's kind of what we're talking about today. Where have they been and where are they at now? I know I've seen, actually I was hopeful. This was actually a little while ago, and we live in, I guess, you know, kind of like a middle class neighborhood, and there's lots of, you know, people wearing, you know, outdoor performance clothing, and I saw these Canada Goose down parkas showing up, and they had a coyote fur ruff on them, Jim, and I said, God bless it, is fur making a comeback? Because I hadn't seen really anything with like a fur ruff, at least personally, in quite a while. Yeah. And, I mean, that's pretty highfalutin coat. That's an expensive coat, you know. And so I was like, man, that'd be so cool if fur was, you know, becoming more acceptable. Maybe people are getting more educated about it. Maybe it's just in fashion and people want to be fashionable. But I guess where have the coyotes been and where are they at now?
The coyotes you can go all the way back to this with Canada Goose, but that was when in the early 80s, you know, it was Eddie Bauer had them, the collars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the coyotes seen a boost. And And then you've seen some of the Italian designers and Canada Goose started putting them on their all-natural parkas, put their goose down and everything. And they were very successful through promotion. And that raised the coyote price.
Okay.
Because, just everybody, if Canada Goose does something good or whatever manufacturer, and you see that at a sale, you go home and copy it.
Right. Everybody wants to do whatever the pinnacle
Whatever's
is
selling,
doing. Yeah.
whether it's China, obviously with the offshoots. So the coyotes have been having a big comeback, and everybody's been chasing. The uncertainty right now is Canada Goose that you see is no longer handling fur.
Oh.
So that's something that was very successful. Yeah. And for whatever reason, probably a lot of it maybe had to do with anti-fur. So that's got to have an impact then.
Sure.
On the coyote price. But will the offshoots be able to pick it up? We're hoping it will. Other companies will take that and promote it.
Oh,
and there
gotcha.
are companies that overseas that are as popular as Canada Goose.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., you'll see it would hurt the coyote price.
Interesting. Yeah, I made when I made that observation. This was a while ago, and then we'd had on the books to do for a while, and then actually it was kind of like coincidental. I was listening to the Meat Eater podcast, longtime listener, and those guys were talking about that specific brand of parka and how they're essentially going to move towards. Now, I think they said it wasn't due to public pressure, if you will. I guess you can speculate however you want there, but to essentially kind of refurbished fur or fur that already exists. So they're not going to necessarily use new fur, but they'll use fur that's already.
What they'll do is they'll take old coats,
okay,
and make trim out of them.
Oh.
But not refurb. So, but nothing that's fresh harvested.
Huh.
So now there's, which will just go and so and nobody understands that one.
Yeah, it's a little bit perplexing. I would think, looking at fur like it's a natural organic substance, like eventually it's going to break down like any other natural organic substance. So it's going to have a shelf life. It doesn't seem sustainable.
How do you feel going to get your designer clothing, that's very expensive, and it's got refurbished anything on it?
Yeah. That's been
and you pay more for it. It's like marketing.
That's been wore out, and it does wear. You see any old mink coat, So this got me bewildered too.
You must have to actually keep up on the fashion industry.
Oh, you do. You see it. Yeah, you do. You see it at the sales. You'll know because not only at a sale, not only are we selling the stuff, we also have designers in it, tanners in it, coats on display. So you see all what's hot and what's not.
Okay.
You know what's going to be hot for pop culture probably before everybody else does.
Yeah, and a lot of times they will. Yeah, as long as you'll see some stuff that isn't for everybody. The fur, it's a little too young for me.
Yeah. The Kanye crowd.
Yeah. But it sells.
Someone buys it.
Yeah. So, there's some stuff that is the only drawback is price, and I don't think you can have affordable fur. I think there has to be a cost to it.
Right.
Otherwise, everybody would have it.
Sure.
And also, I guess, you talk about maybe the mink farm where it's very automated and you are able to have high production with, I guess, less cost going into it. But, you look around, just take one coyote, for instance, or one beaver. The amount of effort that goes into, trapping or shooting or, however you harvest that animal, and then you bring it home, and then, you skin it, you stretch it, you tan it. There's a lot of things going on there to get that hide from from the animal to a garment, and that isn't cheap. There's a lot of cost and time and effort that goes into that.
There's a lot of man hours. You look at a rack of coyotes, and there's 1,000 of them there, and you think, there's probably 2,000 hours in that, just or more, that the guys have invested in what's to come.
Right.
I mean, there could be, labor-wise, 4,000 or 5,000 hours in them racks by the time it ever hits the shelf. And
Wow.
And the labor isn't cheap. You're right. And the transporting.
Mm-hmm.
Because eventually the stuff goes from Wisconsin, for instance, to Italy, China, wherever it's going to go. China's obviously a big taker.
Okay.
Russia. So so you got all that expense. By the time it really gets to the end on the coach, there's a lot of money involved.
Right.
I'm sure.
And maybe that's kind of where we're coming full circle into some of that decline. Like, for a lot of folks, probably the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one.
Yeah.
A lot of effort and not a lot of return.
See, the trappers, you always are going to have trappers or hunters that are strictly money motivated. The ones that are still there, it's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Never going to quit. They'll do it. They're always going to trap or produce fur because it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of it even for myself, like more of a recreational thing. Like I love doing new things. I've shot and skinned a handful of coyotes, but learning new things and I guess becoming a more well-rounded outdoorsman and trying to learn some of these things that are kind of lost arts, if you will, to even just to keep them alive, maybe potentially teach my girls some of this stuff if they're ever interested in it. But definitely like my scale would probably always be like more of like a recreational aspect, to where even if I, got, we'll say 10 hides and, got them to you one day, it'd be like, well, it was really cool, fun process. I had a ton of fun doing it. I got to be outside and I paid for a tank of gas.
Yeah. And, we trap and that's that regardless of the price. But it's a lifestyle, and then it's my recreation. No different than someone goes deer hunting.
It's about, being around here, it's about one of the most vintage, classic Wisconsin things you can do.
It is.
This whole state, you look at it and the history of it and all the fur trading and trapping and all that's going on in this state.
It's been
extensive.
The Wisconsin's always been a hub, from Prairie du Chien, because of the river to, the Hudson Bay. I mean, when they wanted to set up a shop, where'd they go? Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's always been a fur hub. Mm-hmm. And, you always are going to have, to some extent, you're always going to have fur trappers. They're not going to go away if they have to sow stuff themselves or do something with it. But the problem's going to be is getting that back to getting the next generation started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for guys like us, because we got to talk about like the nuts and bolts of this thing, right?
Yes.
Mark? So guys like us, we're going to go on a coyote hunt. Now, Mark, you've done some of this before, right? Like very little, but a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've shot plenty of coyotes. I've skinned a few coyotes. Probably not to the. I've mostly flat skinned my coyotes. I haven't case skinned them before. We were actually
Can you
talking.
Explain just briefly what that means.
Well, Greg could probably do it a lot better, but essentially, going up the belly of the coyote, down the legs, almost like, I guess if anybody's ever seen a bearskin rug, it'd be kind of skinned, looking like that, and then a case skin would be
like what we're surrounded by,
like a sock.
Yeah, where it's like a more of like a tubular nature. All the belly and the back are all connected, and you kind of peel them down. But yeah, I mean, the first coyote I ever shot, actually, this was pretty funny. I mean, talk about small world type stuff. We were talking about this before. We were pre-podcasting earlier today. I was in college, going to Washington State University over in Pullman, shot a coyote in the Snake River breaks, and was like, oh gosh, dang, I'm stoked on this. I'm going to, skin this thing out. So I went over to my my college girlfriend's place at the time. She was living with like 5 other girls. It was cold out, it was winter. And so I skinned this thing on the floor of their garage. I shot it, so it had a hole in it. So it got blood everywhere on the floor of the garage. So I'm finally done with this thing, and I'm like trying to figure out, like, well, how do I, I wanted to keep the paws intact, and I didn't really know how to pull the toes out. And I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to skin out the head because I don't want to ruin that. And, of course, I had all this blood all over the floor, Jim, so I went to clean it up and used water, which immediately froze. So then I created this giant bloody slick ice rink all over the floor. Yeah, they were super impressed by that. But so long story short, I end up with this kind of half-skinned coyote. I didn't do the hard parts, if you will, and I took it over to Moscow Hide and Fur, and those guys took it from me. And Greg, who runs Moscow Hide and Fur?
That's my brother.
That's Greg's brother.
Small world. Yeah.
That is very small world situation. Yeah. That is so wild.
But so to Jim's question, Greg, how do we do this right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of videos out.
Okay.
There really is. We did tapes all the way back in, it was in the late 80s, early 90s. They did a full set of tapes for the Wisconsin Trap Association. And it was species specific, so if you just want to do a coyote, they're really reasonable. You can buy the tape.
Okay.
Want to do a red fox, you can buy the tape, red fox and gray fox. Done base, muskrats and mink. So we had it all broke down.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, at that time, for the tools we had, it was pretty informative. Obviously, the tools have advanced.
Okay.
Lots of stuff has. That was still by hand, but we did it by hand, just like you were going to do it in the garage.
Okay.
And we sold tens and tens and tens and thousands of them. I mean,
wow.
They're all over the United States. You go to Canada. I've been in remote parts of Canada, and I got your tape.
Awesome.
Nice.
So that was informative, was out there. It's never really been updated. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube's and computer you can get.
Yeah. We'll be one of them after we do a few things with you after this podcast. But
watching and doing is a little different.
Yeah.
I can go to a trappers convention. You can have 300 people there watching you. And they say, you make that look easy. I tried that.
Yeah.
But not long enough.
Mm-hmm.
You tried it and quit. You got it. It's like doing anything. It's like shooting.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to keep doing it. When you get good, keep shooting. You'll get better. And the other problem is to have the place, like you said. You got to have the facility to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of today, we have a lot of heated garages. You got places, heated workshops, or the back of the garage is heated. So there is a lot of places to do it, but not if you're renting an apartment or renting a place.
Mm-hmm.
There are, but the biggest drawback is the equipment isn't terribly expensive if you compare it to other stuff.
Okay.
But the biggest, for a couple of dollars, you're set to go. Biggest problem is the place. Especially if you're young and you want to get into it. Your mom don't. Our parents didn't trap. But we had places to do it because we lived on a farm. It's always something heated enough to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that just for, I'd imagine, your personal comfort, but it's probably you need the animal to not be frozen, I imagine, yeah?
Thought out, and, we did it. Most of the stuff you're going to trap or shoot, you're probably going to do. Thought I like to cool it overnight, just like skinning a deer. Some guys like to do everything fresh. I personally don't. And it's not going to spoil if your fur shed's 60 degrees.
Okay.
It's on the floor. It's not going to spoil overnight. It doesn't rot that fast.
Okay.
It takes a while.
Do they still, so the coyotes that I've done, I guess I've done them both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I've done them when they're warm, and I've done them when they're cold, and maybe even a little bit too cold. But the warmer one definitely peeled a lot easier. Is there a difference even if, like, between, I guess, like, I'll call it like a fresh coyote, like one that you just killed and you're going to peel it down, or one that you have in your shed at 60 degrees?
Yeah, the easiest one to skin is probably the fresh one.
Okay.
But it also bleeds the moth.
Okay.
I like to let
Got
them.
it.
It's just like fresh. It's just like cutting up a deer.
Sure.
I like to let everything set up.
That blood kind of coagulates a little bit. Okay.
Otherwise, it seems like, coyote, they never stop bleeding, like you said. And so I prefer my stuff not fresh.
Okay.
And so what's like, generally speaking, obviously it's difficult to go through the process like step by step for a podcast. And we'll do that when we do the video after this. But, what generally do you have to accomplish just in terms of steps? First things first, you got to skin it. But then, like some of these ones that you see around here, they look like they're flipped inside out. And then there's like these boards that you sort of, I think that's where you maybe stretch them or.
What you do
what
is
all happens?
Once you get it skinned, you get the hide off it. The next process is you have to flip it inside out and take the bird and the weed seeds out. Got to be clean to some extent. If there's bloody, you got to get that washed out. Because anytime you get blood in fur, it has a tendency to spoil. For spoilage, blood's going to be your biggest enemy.
Okay.
On the inside of the coyote. Or on the outside. After that, then you have to flip it back inside and put on a beam, and you have to get it flushed. And that means removing the membrane, the fat, anything that's going to make it spoil. And then after that, you need to put it on a board. We do it two ways. First, you put it in with the fur on the inside, leather's on the outside, and then that'll dry to the touch. And then you'll flip it back inside out and put it on the board first side out.
Okay.
And you'll leave it on that, tack it back. I'll leave it on the board for a couple days, and then take it out and hang it and let it finish air drying. Because most of the boards that people have are not really drying boards. They're forms.
Okay.
You're never going to dry 100% on that board.
Okay.
It's basically to get it to hold its shape. So if you do hang it, it'll keep its shape.
Okay.
Because it's just not going to dry 100% against wood.
It makes sense, yeah.
How are you, like, let's say you've got some blood in the fur. How are you, is it just putting that in a 5-gallon bucket of water?
Yeah.
How does a person get that cleaned
You
up?
can take it to the sink if wife ain't home, do it right in the kitchen sink.
Okay.
Real quick, clean up afterwards, spray a little Febreze.
I know guys take it to the laundromat already. The other thing you can do is just a 5-gallon pail.
Okay.
It'll also come out, and I can show you if it's just surface blood, you can take it out after it's dried.
Okay, sure.
There's reals easy to do it. Blood isn't, and then when it comes to a place like this, to an auction house, whatever, and get commercially drummed, most of the drumming will take that blood out.
Okay. Yeah, I think I saw some of those
in
the other room. I definitely want to take a look at that.
What is it now? Drum?
It's a commercial cleaner.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And what we use is for cleaning. We use a laundry soap. Dawn works the best. Dawn dish soap, and the fabric softener.
Okay.
We don't use chemicals. You don't need. You'll hear guys using mineral spirits, and they used to use gas, diesel fuel, and we've seen them use it all, and that works the best by far.
Well,
people used to try and detail and clean cars with gas and diesel.
Yeah.
I think that ended up being a pretty bad idea in the long run.
give you a headache. No.
Some people really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and the other thing today, the guys will use a lot of borax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Auction houses hate it. It's a powdered bleach.
Okay.
And it burns your skin, and you get people allergic. You get it in there and try to work it on the lights, and it's all powder. Nobody wants to breathe powdered bleach all day.
I don't think so.
And me either. That's why they got the mask on. Every time we had borax, they put the mask on.
Oy.
They think it's for COVID, but we wear it because here comes. And in some parts of the country, borax is a huge. Guys use a lot of it. And
Interesting.
You get it in there and what a mask. And so we were ready for COVID.
You've been doing this for years.
Yeah, the whole mask thing.
Bleach don't kill us, COVID will, I guess.
That's probably why you guys' lungs got to be pretty clean if you're just bringing all that bleach.
And I've had guys get sick from it. We had, they do, breathe it in. Some people break out from it real easy.
Sure.
Mark, I guarantee you that our hands would be toast.
They'd fall off immediately.
Yep.
With the Dawn dish soap, in the fabric softener, I guess one thing that's cool about that is those are pretty common items to find at a
Common,
grocery store. People are used to them, and that's what a person would maybe even use. Like I'm thinking small scale here, Jim. We're pretty small scale right now.
So yeah, we're definitely not going to match this.
But you would just put that in your 5-gallon bucket and just kind of rinse it and work it around a little bit, or no?
We mix it with a corn cob.
Okay, so this is during the tumbling process then.
And the corn cob that we use actually comes out of Iowa. It's made for sandblasting log homes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a byproduct of that. And we mix it with that, so it's not even damp. It's in it, but the corn cob does the cleaning.
Okay.
If you're going to clean it at home, we'll show you. You can do it after you take it off. After it's all stretched and dried, you can comb that in with a comb.
Okay.
And get the same effect that we do.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it's not like washing like you do in your washing machine where there's a lot of water involved. It's like almost like a dry cleaning.
The more you wash, the more time it takes. And there's a point where you're not really going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I always think about it, it's like when you shoot a deer, when you shoot I have yet to shoot a coyote. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully that works, but I got to see the dang thing first. Anyway, but when you shoot a deer, when you shoot an animal or something like that, or a jackrabbit or whatever, and you look at it, and they always look so nice, but then you've been like getting cut up and tangled up and beat up, getting to wherever that is that they live, and you're like, how does this thing stay looking so
exactly.
nice?
Yeah, your shirt sleeves ripped off, and you're like, oh, you just still covered in fur. Very impressive. What tools does a person need? Like as far as like any special knives to start with?
Most of the knives you probably have.
Okay.
You really do. I mean, there's some specialty knives if you want to, you can buy them, and they're $7 knives. Okay. You don't need I've had $150 skin knives given to me, and I still don't use them. The more you spend, the harder they are to sharpen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of them are not real good with bones, which we have a tendency to come in contact with skinning. And then you need a fleshing knife, and you can buy the best fleshing knife on the market for about $80.
Okay.
And after that, most of that stuff you're going to have.
Got it.
If you've been, you'll have, then you have to buy some boards, $5 boards, depending upon how big, how much you're going to do, or make your own if you're.
Mm-hmm.
Buy one and copy it and make your own.
Yeah. It's funny. Mike Valley, the old Catfish Mike in Prairie du Chien, said the same thing about knives. He likes to use the cheap ones because they're easier to sharpen.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he does. And you'll see that commercial, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because then otherwise you get those fancier, super hard steels, and they just don't, like...
No, when
they're sharp, they're sharp.
At a $150 knife, then I had to get a $100 sharpener to sharpen it. And pretty soon it's like, I could... For $150, I could buy a box full of these things, and they'll work fine.
That's a vicious cycle.
That it is.
Well, that's cool. I mean, that's encouraging, right?
You don't need expensive knives. No, it's no.
Giant investment on that, and then the, a fleshing knife. I've seen people do, I guess, beavers, for example. Mm-hmm. And maybe a coyote is the same or different, where you get it on the board like we have over there, and it's almost like a draw knife, I guess, or something like that?
It's a double-edged draw knife.
Okay. Is that the same for a coyote?
Same. If one knife does everything.
Okay.
Actually, the first ones we didn't have double edges. They had, we used the draw knife, sharpen a dull one. And then they came out with all our fleshing knives are a byproduct of something else. Just most of them were never made to flesh hides. Then they had the Sheffields came out of London, and they were used for scraping the hair off of deer hides.
Oh, okay.
When they tanned them.
Mm-hmm.
The knife that's the most common in the U.S. Stuff. Most of those are used at the tanner for plucking beaver.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Because when you tan a beaver, they call it shearing, and it also pluck them. That's where they came from.
Okay.
And then they got adapted into the fur trade. Otherwise, it was all homemade stuff.
Interesting. And you said, and I'm just to clarify for myself, maybe some other people, you were talking about a single edge or a double edge?
Yeah, the fleshing knives, they now are all double edged. You have a sharp side, dull side.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, always the back of any animal is harder to flesh than the belly side.
Oh,
Belly side you can do it just with the dull side, but the back where they're exposed to the Mother Nature and everything, that's where the more muscle is, and there you have to cut it off.
gotcha. So you almost want to be a little bit more delicate
Yeah.
using the dull side on the belly section.
Yes.
And then you can, need a little bit more oomph on the backside.
And the skin is thicker on the back, just
Okay.
from fighting, and they've adapted through time too.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, when something and animals get attacked, or even you think about like your dog or cat at home, even like that's that soft underbelly.
It is.
It's a more sensitive area.
If they wanna everything, if they're gonna eat something, they flip it over and start where it's the thinnest. The leather's the thinnest, and that's usually the belly. It also rips the easiest.
Yeah.
Right, and hence using probably the dull knife there. So when you're doing a coyote, maybe walk us through and we might do some redundant things here. There might be some redundancy between the podcast and the video.
Right.
But like, what's that process look like if you're trying to put up? Like I said, I flat skinned those other coyotes that I did.
Yep.
But is that how you want them, or
No.
you want them case skinned?
Yeah, everything today is the only article that's flat skinned today is a beaver.
Okay.
Everything else is case skinned, and it usually starts you down the floor. They hang it up.
Okay.
You'd have a hook on or gambrel from the ceiling, and you'd just start it and pull it down. Today, it's the same thing, only it's automated.
Okay.
We if you want to for a couple $100, you put yourself a skinning machine together, especially doing coyotes or in coon and stuff, and do it the easy way. And they also skin deer, so
Interesting.
it's you can use it for if you can't make it yourself or do it. I've seen machines that work really good at trappers conventions as well as $400.
Oh wow. So what would be the difference there be like? Because I was thinking, you're like, like a gambrel, like if you're a deer hunter, like you probably have one of those at your house, right?
Yep.
So you could hang your coyote on that. So if you're gonna not go through the process of maybe getting that machine, what would that look like if you were just gonna hang it up and do it yourself with knives and?
You cut it and start pulling. It's a little more. It's time consuming.
Okay.
Bigger you are, the easier it is. And then once you open it, you can physically pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen guys that can do it, but for me it wouldn't work. And then you got to keep cutting as you go.
Gotcha.
Sure.
And then
yeah.
Whatever connective tissue you're getting hung up on.
And that's why the guys like if the hand skin, they like doing them warm because you can pull and it'll give a little bit easier.
okay, gotcha.
But you're gonna have more blood go with it.
Okay.
Especially if they're shot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then, I'm not sure. I don't think we have one here right with us right now. But so what does this machine look like? What does this skinning machine look like? I mean, it can't be like super crazy robust if it's $400.
No.
Like what's it look like?
It's
What's
just,
it doing?
It's basically just a frame, and it's got your gambrels on a winch.
Okay.
So it winds it up just like a winch, kind of like the winch on a four-wheeler, and you attach it. Some guys attach to the floor. You can have it freestanding, attached to the frame of the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them use a pair of vice grips. So once you open it, you'll put both legs in it,
Mm-hmm.
the hind legs, and then it basically just pulls it apart.
Okay.
It just usually the carcass goes up and leaves the skin on the floor.
And then that does the head and everything?
Now, right down to the nose, yes. They'll do it, all of it, yeah. So it's got to be tall. For doing coyotes, it's probably got to be 13 feet. Probably won't work in your garage, but you can double hook it. You can take it halfway, and then you take the vise and then rehook it halfway through the machine.
Oh, right. Okay. Got it.
Just double do it, yeah.
Gotcha.
Huh.
What slipping, Jim. I'm using the word actually. I was reading it and thinking it down. I was slipping down my list here, my list of bullet points here, but also you hear about hair slippage. And that seems like something you want to be careful
common.
of.
It's common. And hair slippage is just spoilage.
Okay, I was going to say, what causes that?
You see all the pictures of people with fur in their truck. And usually what it is a coyote would be, you didn't air it out like a deer.
Mm-hmm.
You have a tendency to, especially if you gut shoot it. Anybody been eating venison,
Mm-hmm.
or you got a belly full of meat, that's gonna and it's half been in the belly a long time, so it's broke down. When that hits the leather part, it's real acidy, and it has a tendency to spoil faster.
Okay.
So the rule of thumb is you always want to hang them by the hind feet,
Okay.
or lay them on their back. Even with a coon or any article, but it's always nice to lay them in a truck on their belly, because then you can see the back, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But the belly is where is the problem. That's why they spoil. All spoilage starts around the belly, so you always want to lay them in a truck on the back.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
And I know you can't see the fur, but you're not going to smell it either. So, yeah, because especially with the black, your black bedliners and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a 20-pound coon or whatever, and you put all that pressure on it. It's just like forcing that heat into that belly.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is take that and leave it always belly side up.
Yeah.
And let it air out. Most spoilage is neglect.
Okay.
Makes sense. That's kind of the
And
way
I
it
did-
is in
and
a
I-
lot of things.
Yeah, and I'll show you. It's coyotes. A trap coyote, that you can handle. You can be handle a little different. You have a little more time. You could set it outside and do it in a couple of days if it's in a cooler. A shot coyote, sometimes you can't. If you don't have if you're gonna skin it, you don't have a place to store it. It's not gonna freeze, and then you're gonna have to skin it fresh.
Okay.
And they will spoil overnight. Yeah, if I took a shot coyote to shot with a shotgun and laid it in here, and they brought it in now, and I was going to wait and I skinned it tomorrow morning, chances are it's going to start deteriorating.
Okay.
Yeah.
If a person was in a pinch and they didn't have time, but they did want to skin a coyote, something like that, and let's say they had a freezer and they had the room, could you freeze it,
Sure.
freeze it whole, and then work on it later?
You could. You throw it in there, throw it in your freezer, and you could freeze it.
Mm-hmm.
Thaw it out slow.
Mm-hmm.
And again, backs up.
What about
Belly up.
What about, speaking of freezing, are there some things that a person wants to be careful of? Like maybe you're out calling coyotes or you've been trapping and you're like, I got one. Sweet. And you throw it, it's a cold day, you throw it in the bed of the truck. Like,
Yep.
are there some things you need to be careful of there as well?
No, yeah. The main thing is make sure you put it bed of the truck, the belly's up so it starts airing out right away.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that's shot, because remember, shot coyotes deteriorate faster.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get home, you don't want to do it right away. And especially if it's outside now, it's cold enough. But let's say it's 30 degrees out or 35. If you hang it upside down and cool it down before you put it in the freezer,
Mm-hmm.
you'll save yourself some grace period. Sometime.
Gotcha. And then
Probably also, like, I've heard some people when they throw it in there, if the bed's wet or something, then they can get, like, the fur will get frozen to the bed,
Yeah.
and then when you try to pick it up, that'll rip it off.
Yeah, time to get out the hot water. In the back of my truck, when it's cold, I put cardboard down.
okay.
So sometimes, I got to bring cardboard all in, but at least it's, cardboard, you get boxes anywhere. Or
Right.
whatever. And I always have cardboard down.
Yeah.
And it soaks up the blood if it does. And then
Mm-hmm.
bring the whole works out and start over again.
Yeah.
I know. What made me think of that, Jim, is exactly what you were talking about there. I had a deer in my truck this fall, right? And it was cold out and it froze, and there's a little wet and a little bit of blood, and I basically had to pry it,
Yep,
off the bed liner, which I wasn't worried about the hide. I was just
Nope.
going to Euro mount it, so I wasn't that worried about it. But I was like, man, if you're trying to save that hide, you'd have a problem.
You'd have a big problem.
Do you think that had anything to do with the fact that deer was in the back of your truck for, like, maybe a month?
I know, Jim. I don't even know what you're talking about. It was.
It
Right.
wasn't the whole body, it was just the head.
The head.
Yeah, because
Oh,
I
the head.
kept
Oh, the head.
trying to meet up with
Oh, yeah, I've had that happen. I've had that happen.
the CWD guys to
I've
get
had-
it tested.
No, not
Oh.
the whole body, Mark. You're quicker than that one.
I was gonna say.
I've had that happen. Yeah.
But very interesting. And then, yes, and we talked a little bit about cleaning. Is there anything, that you'd want to maybe have with you to put put the hide in, or as far as the carcass itself? Like, would you burlap bag, plastic bag, things you want to avoid there? Like, maybe you don't want to get blood all over your truck.
No, the biggest thing is I don't use bags when I'm trapping or hunting or whatever. The biggest thing is if you do have toppers,
mm-hmm.
and it's the sun heats them up pretty fast with that black line. Slide the windows open.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Air it out.
Yeah.
You ever open? Everybody's there. You open up a truck and that sun beating in there.
Even on a cold day, it can be warm.
It is, and I look that guy's bring them in here, and it's like, what smells? Well, sun's been beating on it for a couple of days. It's cold out though. Not in your topper, it ain't. Open your window up.
Boy, that doesn't seem like that'd be a pleasant surprise.
No, treat them like a deer.
Yeah. What about we're talking about fur. What about grading? Like grading, sizing. I mean, all this wild fur here, they're all shapes and sizes.
Yep.
One coyote might be, a year old. Another one might be 4 years old. I'm sure there's a size difference there. Like, how does that play into, I guess, the value of the hide, as well as, like, when you're grading hides? When I was on your website, actually, there's a ton of great information on your website, by the way. So whatever we don't cover here, some of it might be the same. Go check that out. But I mean, there was a million different designations that you guys had, all these different abbreviations.
Every article, that we call it, has its own size pack that we use. We do it on boards. Beaver, obviously, you got to do a tape measure. And coyotes fur out stuff is sized the most lenient. So, for instance, coyotes, there's large enough, big ones and small ones. Do we size them all? No. And I got some. I'll show you. They run. The pups are almost the same size as the old ones. We do occasionally, in some sections, we'll take out what we call 3 extra. We will make just like a jumbo.
Okay.
Other article, like a musker, you're down 1/4 of an inch. It's either on the line or it's not.
Okay.
So you got to watch your sizes. Cooner the same way. You could be 1/8 of an inch away from $10. You have to draw the line somewhere.
Right.
And if a buyer sees it, that buys it from us, he goes, see the line? And I've had him do it. Yeah. Is that under or over the line? Well, it's under, just by a little bit. Then why have a line? Either it's over or under. You're correct. You're going to let's say you're using a 29 to 32 inch line.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to use, well, that's not then. You're going to use 28 and a half, 28 and 7/8. What is it? So you have to be, because you're dealing with customers from, it's either 29 or it ain't.
Just a little bit, pretty black and white there.
Black and whites. Sure. And a lot of articles are that tight. Canines, red fox, coyotes, cat, which you get a lot of variants in different widths, isn't. And the rule of thumb is, let's say on a cone, for instance, 8-inch stretch is standard, and you stretch at 9, okay, all the way up the side. Then we add on 1.5 inches. Okay. Used to do it for mink that way. It'd be length plus width. We don't do that. We just add it on because you're wider than everybody else. So it's kind of square inches and length.
Mm-hmm. And then what about, I guess, the different qualities? Maybe some a hide that was very well taken care of versus one that's still usable but not as good.
That when you with younger graders trying to train someone, they all start grading put up. You would too. You're going to grade the nicest handle stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to grade how it's going to dress.
Oh, so you have to not only just see what it looks like right now, but what it will look like
after it's
completely
tanned.
Okay.
So you can have guys with really nice stuff, really good quality, and I got some that didn't do the best handling job.
Okay.
Maybe it's stretched goofy, and it's flesh. It's going to tan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's going to stay there where it should be, like it's going to tan, because once it's tan, nobody's going to see it. But, or let's say you had the worst coyote in the world that's handled really nice, it's still a really bad coyote.
Oh, okay.
Okay. When you you have the worst coyote that's not handled nice, it's still a really nice coyote. And I tell you, most of the time it's a trapper that's starting out.
Okay.
And we make little notes on the bottom of when we send them back, the receipts, or whatever, we make a note on it.
Okay.
Give them a little report card.
We give them a little report card.
So you got
but we get it in that's completely trashed, really bad. So then we return.
Okay.
I just got one with a letter. It's not condemning you. Everybody gets an A for effort. But where you need to go, how you need to, so it's marketable. I can't market something that's not gonna dress.
Sure.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of information out there, and then I've had guys, and then the next year they send in, and I don't know, it'll be immaculate. They just found out they got doing it.
Sure.
Or you'll see guys that will have that in their badge, but you could see as the season progressed, boy, they got better. Then we don't have to call them because you could see the end product.
Interesting.
Got pretty good.
Nice.
Interesting.
So if you start off with a really good coyote, you're in at least a good spot.
Always, yeah.
Because even if you flub a little bit here and there, it's still okay.
Yeah.
If you've got a bad one, then you just gotta.
A lot of guys will start with, a lot of guys started this year just because they want to start trapping. So they'll trap earlier, like on coon than they should to practice.
Oh.
And you'll see they'll have like 4 or 5 really early ones that you could see they practice, and then they waited, and all of a sudden, again, and you'll see some holes in them. They wrecked them, and but you can see them progress.
If you get a hole in one, is it like
no,
done?
No, the knife cut to me isn't as serious as environmental stuff.
Oh,
okay.
Because where there's a big rub, because that's got to get cut out. There's a lot of work in that. They cut it like a football. It's a big process. A cut, you can just sew it up, or cut it. It doesn't.
Oh, okay. So it's not a huge deal if you just nick.
Nick something that bad, and then 2-inch cut, and you think the house fell in. It's like we're not going to throw it out. I don't really care.
Okay.
Good to know.
So what types of things would be stuff that you want to? What you're talking about, environmental stuff. There is that just kind of getting back to like it's spoiled a little bit, or what types of things do you really want to avoid?
Itself and how the coyote.
Yeah, it's environmental is usually what we call environmental is usually the burdocks and stuff that get really embedded. You can't get them out.
Okay.
And parasites, fleas, ticks, and it just tears them up.
Gotcha. So that's not the fault of
nobody,
the hunter or the trapper.
No, that's the kind. No, it's just in years when we don't. Actually, going after last year, we didn't get that deep frost to really hurt the parasites. And we have 2 or 3 years like that. You'll see the coyotes starting in October. I've got them in October that were full of parasites that doesn't pay the skin. The whole back is gone. And you'll get coyotes, we call them city coyotes, and the backs will be perfect this time of year.
Yeah.
The reason we call them city coyotes is because they've done trap close to towns and golf courses, but they spray for all the parasites. People do their lawn.
Oh, yeah.
And them coyotes go in and out. They don't
just
have
living the plush life.
They don't have, and they got all the free food and.
Those are the
neighbor, all the free cats. So they don't have, they don't have that the parasites that they would down in the marsh.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is there anything that you got to look out for when you're skinning these things and doing all that, just as far as parasites go, or something like if you nick your finger with a knife and then you're working on a coyote and there's blood there, like you run into some stuff maybe that you should.
Yeah, I think it's up to the individual. I probably should have had everything. I don't, and I never. Doctor tells me I'm immune to about everything. If you tested my blood, wow.
Just Fort Knox.
Just because, and some people I've worked with, they can poke themselves with a pin, and their finger swells up that big around. I usually wear rubber gloves. It's not to protect the disease or any of that, because you're going to touch it. You're going to come in contact with it. Rubber gloves are just a false they don't work other than keeping your hands clean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I cut myself, I wear them. Everybody's going to poke or cut themselves. The biggest, I still think the one you're going to have more of a chance of getting any of that stuff in the field the minute you walk over and pick it up
Sure.
than you are by the time you get it home. And the other thing, I don't like skin stuff with the body temperature in it, because most of your diseases are in the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Once
Okay.
the blood, for the most, once the blood temperature is gone, the parasites go with it. Not in all cases, but most of them. And the other one is if you got, if it's full of fleas and ticks and don't let it, you got flea and tick spray, yard guard, you spray it down.
Okay.
I do it on my truck. Even, you get done, throw a coyote in it or whatever you got, I just spray it and move on.
Is there
Makes
advantages
sense.
to just, you're talking about, fleas and ticks, and obviously once it's dead, right, that carcass is going to start to cool down.
They all come up.
They all come up. So, yeah, I mean, is there another advantage to kind of letting it set overnight? Like, let's say you just even let it set outside overnight.
Sure.
I imagine some of those things are going to leave.
And that's why a lot of guys do it. You'll see them because of parasites.
Yeah.
It die and they jump off.
Yeah, they don't want to be.
But I do. I like spraying them. And they don't affect that. Most of the fleas and stuff that are on animals aren't going to stay on you because our skin's too oily.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, like you'll get fleas off a coon, you'll scratch and stuff. You can feel them, you see them, but they're not going to stay on you.
Huh. I didn't know. I always wondered that.
That's
'Cause
good
I had-
news.
I don't wanna get
Your
that
skin's too
crap on
oily.
me.
Yeah, your skin's too oily. You're not suited for them, so they're even going to leave you.
Well, and I suppose even just, you got oily and you just don't have the hair to live in, by and large.
I'm just gonna
So
coat myself in oil.
The beard's going, Jim.
Yeah.
All the less hair, the better.
So that they don't, and then they also don't. But yeah, most of the only one that can affect you is if they have the mange,
Oh,
Okay.
and that's also a parasite.
Right.
And I've shot a mangy coyote before, and it's, number one, just jarring the way they look. That was one animal that I've shot that I was like, wow, I think I did you a service. Like it was rough.
And there's different stages. With the mange, before all the hair just completely falls off, they'll have it almost look like it's got a million burdocks in it that are embedded in it.
Okay.
And I've had them guys bring them. But if you take those and you feel them, they're all so mad, and cut them open, and it'd just be full of parasites.
Oh my gosh.
That's how they live. And when they go through the brush, I think they'll live 15 minutes off the coyote. They told me this has been 40 years ago too. You can pick it up. It's not common for people to get, but I've known people that have.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And then they go to the doc. How does I don't even.
Oh,
know.
you get a little irritated. Oh, you had a little touch of the mange. You've been skinning fox. Yeah. Oh, he'll go away. Don't worry about it. It does. But it isn't. It doesn't.
I just don't like bugs.
Jim,
and
I'm not going to be in Monday. I got a touch of the mange.
Yeah, there you go. Where?
Wow. I guess I hadn't really thought that far.
But most of us, it will never affect you. They won't stay on you.
Okay. And probably best practice there, if you shoot a real mangy coyote, probably just leave it lay.
Yep, I do.
Yeah.
Drag it, weeds done. It's not. I've been around lots of in my life. How many mangy ones and I have personally only know one person that ever got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Up north, and he was which was really weird. He didn't even know he had it. Just a rash, and he was in the 80s. So when he went in for a checkup, and he's got the mange. Oh, okay.
Well, as many as you've been around, I like those odds. Generally, I
would
say
say
I like
so,
those
yeah.
odds when it's going to be the odds are in your favor. But I guess I like the odds of it not being in my favor of contracting mange. If that makes sense.
Exactly.
I'm not. Guys that I've known that shot and didn't know what it was and dragged him around, put him in a car and did everything. They've never gotten anything.
That's
And I
good.
tell them, if you ever do, let me know. They don't want to touch it either, but
Yeah.
well, you did. You threw it in there. It's too late now.
All these, I'm kind of switching gears here, going back and forth a little bit, Jim. But all these hides that we have here, they've gone through a lot of steps in the process. Now, at the point where they are right now, like their skin stretched, dried, are they headed to the tannery then?
No, what they'll do is eventually, first, when we're done, they'll get cleaned, and then they're going to get graded.
Oh, so these haven't even been graded yet?
No, they're just coming in and off the bench. So we'll have, 80,000 coyotes or whatever. And they all get graded according to the sections, east, west, south. The coyotes got a big range right from northern Canada all the way to Florida.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and east to west. So you got a terrible mixture of coyotes. So what you want, the manufacturer wants, is match bundles.
Okay.
The fur is the same length, color is the same. They're
Makes
either
sense.
damaged or they're not damaged, so you want them matched. So, and once they're matched, then what we do is, let's say there's 500 of them that are all the same. We'll pull a sample of six or eight. And when you come to a sale, because you don't have time to look at all this stuff, there's 3,000 samples. You'd be at it. You'd live up there. So you just look at them, 6 or 8, and that would represent 500. It could represent 1,000. Somewhere it goes around 20,000.
Okay.
And you look
Okay.
at those 8, and then whether or not you trust that 8 is on the company's, how much you trust the company.
Okay. A little reputation involved there then.
All right, guys, don't even look at my samples. You did it again. They're the same as last time. Okay.
Okay.
They've been looking at my samples for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll call you if something comes up.
And now, are they the same or the better? Actually, they're better, they're worse. Sometimes, I remember some years, they better look at the samples.
Okay.
It ain't the same coyote that, they're just not as good this year.
Gotcha.
Oh. Or they're really good, you don't have to look at them this time.
Okay.
And
so that's going, and so that at that point, that person is the person who will, I guess, essentially bid on these hides at auction?
So then what they'll do is they will get you'll go through, you get a catalog, and every lot is in it of all the species, and it's a book, and you think, there's a lot of stuff in there. And it'll have all this description of the goods, and then you can write down what you think it's worth, in which you'd have your records from the last couple sales. And then after that, you go into a room, and it's kind of, I don't know, if you've never been to one, I always tell them it's kind of like a stock market, a live one. And then it's on a board, and you have a live auctioneer.
Mm-hmm.
And you have spotters and everything else, and then you bid.
Okay.
Sit in there with your numbers, and if you go on like Sagas and stuff, they got a really good picture of their auction house, or I think there's some on our website. And then you can see, they sit in there, and these people are guys that come by them. Most of them are very well dressed, so they'll go out. They're not going to go out and handle a bunch of greasy coon or flop around,
Mm-hmm.
And we also give them what we call helpers. So if you want them, they'll bring them to the bench for you. So you tell them what you want to see, and they bring them and take them off. You can look at most of them, just look at them. Oh, they don't even touch them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then that person is the. God, I'm trying to get this process down in my head. But would that person be a person from a tannery, and then there's a next step that goes to the garment industry, or is it a person from the garment industry that's bidding?
Yeah, he's probably got a shop that he's making garments, trim, whatever else. So he's buying them.
Okay.
Okay. And then he would send them to his personal favorite, his tanner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. To get tanned, and then to return them. Some of them might be a broker, and he might have, let's say, I'm going to a sale, and you run a little shop. You make some hats. You make like a couple hundred hats a year and stuff, and you make some blankets, which is a huge business today, blanket business. So you're going to do all this, and you're going, geez, I don't really have to pay to go. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to call Greg. He's a broker. So he takes all the little orders, and he'll come and fill everybody's order. And obviously, if I buy you stuff and you're always happy with it, you keep calling me because that's my go-to guy. And then there's some they'll buy for that are big. They don't want to, they run big shops, don't have the time to go, don't want to do it. So they'll contract someone like me. And I need 5,000 coyotes. and you know what I always buy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'll go to sale now with the phones and all the technology today. They can watch it live, and you basically sit in the middle, and he can watch the sale. He knows the bid, and it's like you can just keep so he can do it in his office.
How about that?
Wow.
It's live sales, yeah. So you'll see on the sale, guys will have the phones and the computers going and bidding, and then it's like, okay, what number who you buying under? Because every buyer has a number, and you might have 5 of them in front of them.
Does that happen? Does it happen pretty quick? Once it gets going, it'll happen pretty.
If you've never been to a sale before, you'll be behind.
Yeah.
You don't even know what page you're on, you'll be lost.
I know. I was calling into a salvage auction. I've done it twice now, and it's amazing how quick it goes. Somebody calls you up, and they're like, "All right, do you want it? It's at this. Do you want it? It's at this now." It's like, sure. And like, cool, it's yours. And you're like, it's done? And you're like, yep.
Yeah, these are live auctions. Like it's these live auctions with a hammer gamble. It goes about as fast as you can write.
Yeah.
So you better know in the room what what you want. But they're used to it.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're used to buying it. And sometimes it's a little slow if you get a lot of people bidding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the stuff is pre-valued. Like when we valued, I used a 3-year average. Okay. Because the last sale was history. Everybody looks at the last sale. Well, that don't mean nothing. It's like going to a gas station. Well, that's what it was yesterday, so that's what it should be today. Well, no, it changed.
Right.
Right.
So we just use a 3-year average.
Okay. Okay.
And then we value it, and you can value stuff and miss it. The value of it on both ends, up or down. Styles change. I valued it 3 weeks ago. I can't read everybody's mind.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll tell you this is too high. I know it. We'll make it up and bid for it on the stand, or they don't want the article. Sometimes they just no demand for the article, so you don't sell it.
Interesting. And then you were saying when it comes to tanning, I just assumed like tanning was tanning, and there was your set of chemicals or whatever you use. But you're saying every tannery has like their own special.
Yeah, that's it. Tanners are pretty secretive because they all have their own way of doing it. Like there's some tanners a lot better than others.
Okay.
Some specialize in different stuff, like just dyeing.
Mm-hmm.
Some are better at certain articles. So a tanner, the tanning process is really complicated. I mean, you really have a lab.
Okay.
How they're mixed, what they do, and a lot of the chemicals are recycled, and it's quite a process.
Interesting. And if a person wanted to do it themselves,
you can buy the home tan kits, and all it is it's like if you stretch and dry something, that keeps it from rotting in the carcass.
Mm-hmm.
But it is going to rot. After it's stretched and dried, it's going to fall apart if it's not tanned, cured.
Okay.
So most of home tans you get are kind of like our salt base. It's really you're kind of a salt we call a hard tan. It's going to turn hard on you because you don't have the equipment to break the leather.
Yeah.
So you're just prolonging it. Like a Coke could last, I've had stuff tan 40 years is fine. A home tan might only last 10 or 15.
Interesting.
Got it.
Because it's not, you never got it really into leather.
Got it.
Yeah, but you just prolonged it.
Yeah, I know. Because I tried that. I'm speaking from experience or lack thereof. So I shot a coyote back when I lived in Nebraska. I'm like, I want to, kind of go through this process, and so I bought the tanning solution kit from Cabela's, where I was working at the time, and I had it in the basement, and I soaked it in whatever Formula A and then Formula B, and then let it dry, and it just. And I didn't have all the proper fleshing tools, so there's probably a little bit of fat on it. But it did cure it, and it was like you could have probably hit a home run. I mean, it was stiff, It was like, and it didn't look quite as nice as these ones that you got here. So it sat on under the wood stove. That's where I kept it until eventually I threw it away, Jim. But it was kind of a proof of concept, though. Like it did work,
and it did prolong it.
But it wasn't soft. Like, it wasn't like a garment.
Yeah, they do have some home tan stuff. There's some brain tan. They do it, and there are some people that can home tan pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But they spend hours at it.
Interesting. What gives it?
Well, I don't think we'll be doing that.
Probably not.
The oil in the oil they put back in the leather.
Okay.
And then that leather has got certain thicknesses to grind that leather down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have a grinding wheel for that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, if you go to a tanner, one of the hardest things is to learn or to get guys to do, and that is to grind that leather down without exposing the fur roots.
Okay, right.
So it's pliable, and then re-oiling it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Are they tumbling it, or what makes it so like pliable and
After
soft?
they wash it and stuff, that's oil in it.
Oh, that's oil.
Then the brake and the solution they're using.
Okay.
And then they also have
Solution.
automatic brakes, like you'd work it over horse, you see, or whatever guys do that, and they have automatic brakes. And then, but when they soak in that solution, a lot of them do use a drummer, just to dry it, to clean it. But the last step will usually be a drummer. It's a little bit different even than what we use.
Yeah.
A cleaner. That's why you get back. It's so clean, and then it's oil. You can see the shine to it.
Mark, before we turn into Breaking Bad over here, though, I don't think we.
I know. I can tell you're getting antsy. I had too many questions. My list was too long.
Your
Jen.
list is. Oh my gosh, we're still even on the first
Oh no,
full
no,
pages.
I printed off one for you too. So there's just one page.
We should do this.
We should do. We've talked. We've gotten all the way to the tanning, but let's circle back up, get to the front end, and take a coyote from the round and get him skun out.
Absolutely, I like that. Coop's over here.
And I'll let you do it.
Can't wait.
Awesome.
I got 2.
Perfect.
Greg, as you can tell, I'm personally fascinated by all this stuff, hence like probably the 9 hours I've been making you talk about it. But we appreciate you taking the time
you bet.
to provide your insight here. You definitely have a lot of experience. So,
But no, it's interesting concept to see. It's the one thing in this business that always amazed me is you can take you deal with every religion under the sun. People from all over the world, all the way from, and not in a bad way, from Amish to their stuff, all the way to you name it. Guys that have millions. It's funny how it all connects. And then when you're selling this stuff and you're going through it, because everybody has a signature. I always just whose it is.
Yeah.
It's funny. So it's interesting just to watch
see
it.
A lot of different people.
When you see it on both ends.
yeah.
It'd be fun to take a trapper and have a little camera on your coyote. Then you can see it graded, drummed all the way.
See all the different touch points.
Yeah, it would amaze you. See how many people look at it a sale.
My gosh.
Just watch all the way to who's wearing it, and you'd blow your mind.
Gosh, yeah. That's
Quite
wild.
the journey.
It's a journey.
Quite the journey.
It is a journey. Yeah.
Well, and hopefully with some of this that we're talking about, Jim, maybe we'll inspire some folks to get back in the game. Or not get back to start, because it's
a lot of them
fun
do start.
stuff.
They just a lot of them, a lot of them do it. They're just trying to. You just can't teach everybody. It's just the country's too vast, and there's not the knowledge left out there to do it, to teach them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hopefully in the next couple of minutes you'll teach 2 more.
We'll teach some more.
All right. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.